Welcome to Are You Awake? With Dr. Goldal Kaba. When we can become clear and can state our intentions in our lives with this clarity, the world changes. The intention of our show is to change the world, a step and a show at a time. The world, through each individual, is changed for the better and transformed with awareness, attention, and intention. These shows are offered to you, any of you that are reaching out, so that you may find what you're looking for. Answers, paths, teachers, and most importantly, to learn to listen to the call of your soul. Our topics, guests, and input from you, our audience, are meant to stimulate thought, encourage growth and healing, to teach and inspire, to open the door, and to open hearts. We know this will change the world. Now, please welcome Dr. Goldal.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Are You Awake on EnergyTalkRadio.com, also found on GlobalOne.tv. I am Dr. Goldal Kaba, your host, asking you the question, are you awake, and are you awake today? And what does that mean for you? Each and every day as we do this show, my life's passion has been about taking all that I've learned to disseminate that information and share that in the form of dedicated passion, and mostly as an opportunity to help the rest of you ask yourselves that question, because in awakeness, in that opportunity to be awake and think clearly, a consciousness arises. And in that consciousness, we can see things in a way we've never seen them. We can heal old wounds, clear up unfinished business, and most importantly, see the world as more of a unified whole, see our connection to all things, and move in life with light and purpose and joy. Today, I'm really excited. It's been a while since my friend and partner in business and crime, if you will, co-founder of Inner-Pathic Process with me, Dr. Ken Davis, is here. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always fun when you and I can share the wholeness of what we've created together with our audience. How are you today?
I'm good, and it's always exciting for us to do one of these because I never know what I'm going to learn in the process or where our awareness will take us.
Yes, he's always the more humble of the two of us in this process. Absolutely. That's right. You know, tonight we talked about what would be important. And I know one of the difficult things, like when we were putting together the website and as we're working on the book, has been to talk about this process that we do in our practice in psychotherapy, do in our practice when we're doing the inner-pathic process in body work. And that's utilizing metaphor, images, pictures, mythology, fairy tales, and how they can awaken something in us, and maybe how the stories across time are kind of all the same. And we thought it would be a really fun show and an educative show to talk about that. So I'm going to kind of turn that over to you because you have such poetic language and people always get to hear me talk. So talk a little bit about how you find that such a useful thing to know and understand and what it means to you.
Well, I know that you're a big fan of Tolkien, and I think the stories that we see move us because they bring things to awareness. They heighten in us a sense of what's important. They get to observe how other, people may be, say, in the fairy tale or in a movie, in a book, how they work to resolve things. It brings thoughts, awarenesses to their mind. And we do it all the time in therapy, I think, both in terms of helping people with how they think about the world, what they inherited from their family, what they learned from their family, what they learned from their culture, and also in their body, how people have come by, their way of being in their body, how they experience in the world, how they bring some things into their body and how they keep some things out of their body.
It's an interesting thing because, Clarissa Pinkola Estes in I think the early 90s wrote Women Who Run with Wolves, and she took stories from all around the world and looked at them and said that every single culture from the beginning of time, way before there was the opportunity for communication to travel, that all cultures had stories that related to the human consciousness, to transformative stories. These stories of transformation. So you're talking about people in their bodies and how we work with people psychologically. In the end, I think ultimately we all want some level of transformation. So we go to the movies, we listen to the fairy tales, we look at mythology as a way to help us do that. Would you say that's true?
I think yes. It's been, I think, part of our human nature, our human process when we're not purely in a survival mode, which I think often happens. We thrive, I think, to heal. We thrive to become different. Even when we're in a survival mode, if we've had a trauma or if our whole culture is experiencing a trauma, we're looking for a way out, and we look to myth to help us figure that out. We look to stories. We look to fairy tales to give us direction for how to live our lives.
We also use that for another person to understand us. I think you and I have often talked about, and one of the basis of all healing is to be heard, to be understood. So often people will come with a pain and tell it to us in a story. You know what it's like to be out on a lifeboat, out in a storm by yourself. Like, people respond to the story compared to, I feel all alone. Like, even though we might understand the words, many people have a bodily, deeper understanding of the story or the image that people try to present their pain with or their experience with.
I believe that's true, and I think what we do, again, in both of our works, is that we help create images or metaphors or languaging that captures something. And in the capturing, say, the image of being, in a lifeboat, there's sharks all around, or whatever it is. There's a sense of a storm coming. As you think about the image, you start to feel things in your body. And many people's images that they feel or experience in the world are, in a way, a trap, or they stop them. It keeps them from moving forward. And I think, again, the advantage of creating an image that opens people to healing is that it at least gives them some opportunity to think about a different way or a different feeling that they can sort of take on. I think what we do in the bodywork portion is that we also experience it in our body. So we have a myth kind of how our body should be, how it should walk, how it should respond to other people, if we should be a sponge body. Remember your kind of early thing, should we absorb everybody's stuff?
Right.
How far away is it safe to have people? We carry the experience of our myth of how we're supposed to be in our body as well as in our mind, and I think we get stuck by that.
Well, I think we do too, and I was hoping that what we would do then is we help people understand a little bit more about the power of image, power of story, is to then take that and help leave our audience with some ideas as to what they can do using images to help their own transformation, their own healing in their body and their life experience. I find it really interesting, and maybe this is an aside, but I've noticed recently that on television and in the movies, what's coming back are fairy tale stories. We went from the sci-fi Tolkien, Harry Potter kinds of experiences of metaphor, Star Wars obviously years ago, but which has stayed popular, to now people are doing shows actually about the fairy tale themselves. I think Charlize Theron's doing a movie about the fairy tale. I don't know if it's Red Riding Hood or Snow White, but I know there's all these fairy tale stories, and we are in a time of distress. So it is interesting where these transformation, old fairy tales that we're so used to are popping up everywhere for us to grab hold of somehow. Good and evil, the apple, all of that kind of thing. What do you make of that?
I think the advantage of it being in a story, something we see or something we hear, is that it pulls it outside of our own consciousness. So in whatever kind of way we relate to that, it's on the outside of us. We can look at it, we can think about it, we can reflect, we can increase our awareness, we can become, to borrow your phrase, we can become more awake about what it means to us and how we experience it. It can heighten in us. Being on the outside of us, we're not embedded in it, and it's not embedded in us. we can then at least have a perspective on, well, how does this movie, how do I feel about it? Am I moved in it? How did they resolve this? Many of my friends had become kind of wrapped up in The Walking Dead, this series on TV, and I watched part of it, and even though there's zombies, which I know must stand for something, there's all of the things that have to do with how people relate to other heroes, people who have ethics, people who don't have ethics, people who behave in a way to support the group versus people who behave in a way to just for themselves, and there's outcome from these actions.
So stories teach.
Stories teach, they awake us, I think. If we can reflect on it, and I think part of the reflection, I know you and I have talked about the importance often of awareness. Part of the reflection is a thinking awareness. I see this happens, but also we use feelings and our bodily awareness to help us kind of navigate, what happens to me, what character do I relate to in the fairy tale, what moment is powerful in the fairy tale, how does that feel to me, does that feel right, is there something wrong, and you know this image better than me, we've all been challenged by things from the depths, which feel evil to us, and like in the Tolkien, when the wizard stops and says, "Thou shalt not pass," right? And yeah, I know you know this, but I mean that's like an image.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I was just talking about that with Jim earlier, our sound engineer and producer. So we're laughing. Ken, I'm going to just kind of have you take a breath for a second so we can help the audience catch up. When you say that people feel it in their bodies, can you explain that a little? I mean, obviously I know what you're talking about, but this is new to many people, and we have new listeners every month and new listeners every week. Can you explain a little bit like what that means? Like, I feel something in my body, and how is that going to tell me what?
I think that if people are moved by something, if it means something to them in a very personal way, that we as people feel something. Part of the data of our universe is this excites me, or this scares me, or this makes me sad, or this makes me happy, or this makes me relieved, or I guess using the image of Tolkien, they're being chased, there's this thing that's getting ready to gobble them up and, end it all. And what do you do in adversity? And there's almost something that feels right, in your body, like you have this breath and you stop and he challenges, "Thou shalt not pass." You feel like this is the right thing. There's strength in doing this. And I think that sort of makes sense, right? That otherwise it wouldn't mean anything to us. It would be a movie or a myth. It would be purely an intellectual exercise, which would be interesting, but wouldn't capture us enough to say want to watch the movie or read the book. There's something about the human dilemma that we experience in our body.
So in that becoming awake, helping people find their connection to their body is a very important tool. And story and mythology and metaphor, fairy tale, wherever the movies, I mean, it could be Rocky for that matter. Boy, we keep dating ourselves. We need to pull on something a little more pop culture.
I was trying to use The Walking Dead as an example. It seems to have a very large following, but I'm very new to the following.
Right.
So.
But it could be anything. It could be, any part of a story or a movie, or even the video games that the kids can't seem to let go of. There's story in there. Now, that's a whole other conversation I don't want to get to. But the way that we feel that in our body, because the metaphor reaches our subconscious, like our subconscious doesn't know words. It knows pictures. And from that, it tells our entire body the story, or it awakens inside of our body a knowing, like, oh, I've lived that. I know that at some level.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And I know that Jung, which is one of your favorites, talked about how metaphor and image is how we move the subconscious. I'm kind of wanting to take this to how then guided imagery and using images can help people heal, so that by the end of the show, they can walk away with something palpable to do. So can you talk a little bit about they being you people, the audience? I'm sorry, talking like you're not here. But can you give our audience something to understand about metaphor and the subconscious, maybe from a Jungian perspective?
Well, I think Jung, was, of course, a great believer in the whole person, right? Because he had what eventually became the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which talks about thinking and feeling and awareness and inside and awareness on the outside. And he was also very concerned about myth in a broader sense of the world, and his notion that there are these archetypes that live inside of us that are passed down in our collective unconscious and that help influence how we react to the world and how we respond to situations that occur in the world. And in the use of imagery, if we were going to do this, say, in a more Jungian way, we might help someone sort of figure out, well, what is their archetype? Are they the archetype of the hero? Are they, the archetype of the jokester? Do they have some kind of archetype that they usually use to automatically and unconsciously navigate the world? And then in terms of does it help them or not help them, we would want to think about, well, when you do this, what happens? Does it work for you? When does it work for you? When does it not work for you?
Do you have an example for hero or because people will say, I'm the giver or I'm the this. People already can name their archetype, but some people can't. I know there's many, many books out there just to help people name their archetype. But can you give an example, for example, of a hero archetype? Well, what would you expect to have that person experience? Just generalized, obviously.
Again, I'm going to borrow from The Walking Dead a little bit just because I spent with several people 6 hours trying to catch up to the episodes yesterday. And there is this policeman who wakes up having been shot, so he comes back to life, essentially. He comes back to life at a time in which there are these zombies that aren't really alive, eating people, and he has to somehow figure out how to. First, he looks for his family, which is kind of an interesting change because in the past, I think it's a change in the archetype for men, maybe in our culture, in which now we at least see men as valuing creating family and connecting to family in a way that we hadn't before. They took on larger battles of the universe rather than trying to take care of the more intimate partners and connection. And he's looking for his family, but in the process, he runs into all these dangers. And every time he's faced with an ethical decision, rather than taking the easy, expedient way out, he makes a choice that values the group, and he makes a choice that does the right thing if he's made a commitment. So, and of course, there's the foils. There are people in the group who believe it shouldn't be done that way, who they should just save themselves, and there are people who don't understand what he's doing, and there are people who are only out for themselves. And so at least the notion of a hero is they're always taking on some challenge in the world that in some sort of way supports the human experience, it supports the value of human beings rather than, say, selfishness.
So that would be like a hero archetype, someone who's out there to make a difference, to save, to rescue.
Yes, to take care of people.
To take care of. And this could be male or female, correct?
And it could be male or female. I mean, it's interesting that in this particular movie, there's no female, or series, I guess, there isn't a female that's come exactly to the front to balance him. And I think for it to be even more powerful, I'll keep my eye as the season goes along, that I'm assuming at some point there's going to be some woman who becomes stronger or some woman who moves forward, because I think, at least I'm believing, that a change in our culture is that we are now more valuing of the roles that everybody plays and the importance of the changes in how we think about men and women. But again, we have all these myths, which I think you've just alluded to, about who can take care of things and who can't take care of things, and knights that save, fair maidens is an old myth. And some of the myths just don't work in the same kind of way.
Ken, thank you very much. It sounds beautiful. I think this is a really good place for us to take a break. These concepts can be really complicated, yet they're so simple. But that's why pictures and stories and mythology make such a difference. It simplifies what feels complex when it's a part of our internal experience. Very much like what you were talking about, putting it on the outside. So I think let's take a break and we'll come back. And on the comeback, we'll turn it over to you at some point, and you can end this show with a healing. And we'll be right back.
Internalized stress can cause our bodies to become weak, less productive, and can cause illness. Finding wellness can be difficult. Dr. Goodall is pleased to introduce a product to assist in bringing you to this wellness in a manageable, efficient, effective way. This is Dr. Goodall's Inner Peace Method for awareness, activation, and enhancement. The first set within the Inner Peace Method includes a CD with exercises and a sacramental liquid copal, which will unite your body and mind, bringing clarity, health, and presence. A multidimensional shift. Discard your emotional and physical burdens. Go to innerpathicprocess.com and order your set of peace, presence, and balance today.
One of his students asked Buddha, "Are you the Messiah?"
No.
"Then are you a healer?"
No.
"Then are you a teacher?" The student persisted.
No, I am not a teacher.
"Well, are you a prophet?" he further queried.
No.
"Well, what are you?" he pleaded.
I am awake.
Welcome back, everybody. We've been talking with Dr. Ken Davis, co-founder of Innerpathic Process with myself. You can find out more information about Dr. Davis at www.innerpathicprocess.com. You can Google Dr. Ken Davis, and of course you can always get information at areyouawakeshow.com. Just send us an email. We've been talking about the power of story, the power of metaphor, fantasy stories, movies, and how these stories touch our subconscious in such a way. And Dr. Davis was so eloquent in talking about how that puts this resonance outside of our body, things that maybe we're struggling with about humanity personally, puts us outside of our body so that we can learn from it. And it's just been a great show. We're very thrilled. And Ken, I thank you. I think what we'll do next show that we do together, we'll follow up and we'll move into talking about guided imagery and the power of that based on what we talked about today. But I think what we'll do, like we always do, we'll wrap with the healing. But today, Dr. Davis, Dr. Ken, has offered to do that for us like he does when he's on the show. We're so grateful. People love your healing exercises. And I will sign off my voice. Open your heart, your crown, take a deep, deep breath, and ask yourself each day, are you awake? Namaste.
Please stay tuned for Dr. Goldal's healing exercise and visit innerpathicprocess.com.
I would like to do something around our stories. And it occurs to me that while I talked about the importance of taking a negative something out of us so we can look at it, it's also true that some of us have stories out there that sort of touch us, but we don't let the positive in. So I will invite you to consider, as you get quiet and as you connect to your experience by breathing a little and by opening your crown, as Goodall says, and relaxing your hips, let them sink into the chair if you're sitting. Open your kind of heart, your sternum area around your chest by just relaxing your shoulders, letting your jaw drop as you get quiet and as you take quieter breaths so you can feel your body better. I will invite you to consider a story that was either moved you inside profoundly but felt stuck inside of you, And I'd invite you to consider releasing that story if it feels stuck to you, if you feel where it is in your body. So just image it like if it's attached, kind of moving outside of you a little, breathing to fill it as it goes, and sit it outside of you. Sit the feeling you have in your body outside of you and the image outside of you so that you can at some point take a look at it and reflect on it in a more thoughtful way. Because when we're really overwhelmed with something on the inside, it's hard to see what it means on the outside. And alternatively, if you're a person who hasn't taken in the positive or struggles with that, if you've had a movie where you feel moved in a positive way, to let that come inside of you and settle inside of you. And this is a way that you could use your experience in your daily life, connect to things that would be better for you to be able to look at and reflect on, and to allow yourself to feel more profoundly those positive moments.
Thank you for participating in today's show. If you have any questions, ideas, or comments, email us at info@areyouawakeshow.com. That's info@areyouawakeshow.com.